a student was sent to me, not one of my students, who's in Calculus 2, who is really struggling. And his complaint to me was that he thinks he understands everything in homework, and then when he gets into the exams, he just falls apart. Nothing makes sense. Everything goes wrong. So I started talking to him and I asked him, well, how does he go about doing his homework? And he said, well, he takes careful notes in class and he writes down everything his instructor writes down, the examples. He says, then he takes his homework out and he tries to go line by line, matching up what he's doing with the instructors. And he told me he tries not to look at it, but when he gets stuck, he looks at what the instructor did. And I asked him, I said, but how is that helpful in an exam when you don't have the instructor's notes to look at? I said, it sounds to me like you're trying to memorize and pattern match your way.
Hey leaders and learners, Leonard Geddes here with the LearnWell projects, where my mission as always is to make learning more visible, more manageable, and more effective. This single practice makes all the difference between strong and weak performances on midterm assessments. It's kind of advanced, so learn it, teach it, and train your people on it. It will help them be more impactful in their assistance and in their instruction, and it will help students perform much better on those pesky midterm exams. Hi, I'm Leonard Geddes, founder of the LearnWell projects, where my mission as always is to make learning more visible, more manageable, and more effective so we all can have more success. So it's October, which in higher education means midterm season. And so right now, students are gearing up for those midterms, and I'm going to share a strategic tool that I've used to help students do a type of mental labor that they often fail to do, but that is critical for midterm success. By now, students have taken at least one assessment in their courses and have received their results back, which means students are in the adjustment phase. As I've said previously, my students and I call September the mismanagement month because students miss several opportunities to put themselves ahead during this month. Well, October is the first real stress test of students' learning. And here's a superb, simple way to explain the mental labor students should be doing to properly prepare for comprehensive exams. Many students perform poorer on comprehensive exams than on regular exams. A primary reason is that while they understand that comprehensive exams are more difficult than typical tests or comprehensive projects as opposed to regular projects if you are being assessed by projects, they don't know why these comprehensive exams are more difficult. Here's why. Comprehensive exams are designed to assess whether students understand relationships among core concepts within a discipline. When I observe students at the various institutions I've worked with, it's crystal clear that students don't have effective tools for building relationships. What they have are ineffective tactics, powerless mental processes, and wasteful effort. If you are familiar with my work, then you know that I break academic work down to the 3 C elements. In class, students receive content, they study the content, and learn the content. Basic assessments such as quizzes, basic writing assignments, simple projects, problem sets, and the like are assessing whether students know the content. But comprehensive assessments assess for something more. These mammoths are looking to see if students can make relationships. That type of labor is making meaningful relationships. So here it is, check it out. So meet Kate. Kate's one of my favorite students. She's a hardworking student in the chemistry course. As you can see, she's feeling good about herself right now. Well, she goes into her chemistry course, she realizes that this is the content that may be explicitly communicated by the instructor or the professor, or it also may be the material that is presented in books and other resources. Kate's diligent, and her notes might look like this. She feels really good about how she's studying. I mean, look at her. I feel so prepared. Go me. But then she doesn't realize that that course content that she's been studying are really related to these larger, more fundamental course outcomes. So then Kate gets to the exam and she encounters a question like this. Kate's crushed because she can't answer the question. She's feeling bad all of a sudden while taking this test that she's been preparing for, and she just thinks, I feel tricked. What Kate doesn't realize, and sometimes professors and even those who help students in the learning assistance profession don't realize, is Kate is really struggling bridging the gap between this content that she's been studying and the course learning outcomes. And so this is a challenge that Kate has to overcome, because it's not only going to affect her on this upcoming midterm, but it's likely going to affect her across all of her courses and all of her assessments in this course and other courses as well. If you're familiar with my book, How to Successfully Transition Students into College from Traps to Triumph, I have a rubric for creating what I call metacognitive based learning outcomes. My rubric is based on 6 essential elements that learning outcomes need in order for them to be useful tools for students to learn successfully independently away from the classroom. Unfortunately, many educators make learning outcomes for people up the chain of command, deans, program directors, accrediting bodies, so on and so forth. However, they haven't discovered the utility learning outcomes can provide students if they are properly made and used by students. So these are not great learning outcomes, they're just ones representative of the courses that I've worked with. So in my book, in the Division of Labor chapter, it focuses on the division of labor traps that students and educators tend to fall into. So one of the things students have to do successfully on comprehensive exams is they have to be able to make relationships. They have to go beyond storing and retrieving information, but to making meaningful relationships. And what you see on the right here is some of the content that Kate may have in her notes that she may be studying. If you're working with Kate as a coach, a learning assistance profession, these are the things that may be explicitly covered that she may bring with her to a learning or helping session. If you are a professor whose students come to you after class, these are the things that you may work with them on. But unfortunately, working with them on this alone is not going to help them. So Kate may know these types of things, but this particular content is only meaningful as it connects to these concepts. And then those concepts are only meaningful as they relate to these overall course learning outcomes. And so making these relationships are critical for Kate to learn effectively and to be successful. So this content is only meaningful in the context of these concepts. If you don't understand the concepts, which are the lens of the field, then you're not going to really be able to use the content on the types of unpredictable questions and problems you're going to have to navigate on comprehensive assessments. And then these concepts must be rooted in these broader course learning outcomes. So Kate needs to make those relationships in order for her to learn effectively. So one of the things that I've seen is that institutions are stuck in these silos. One of the key silos is that institutions believe that students have to learn according to their field. So they believe that if you are in a STEM-based course, well, you have to learn STEM techniques. If you are in a humanities course, well, you have to learn humanities course. I've had the pleasure of working with students across a variety of courses, and I've seen these strategies help students regardless of the course they're in. And the institutions that I've worked with have reported in their own data that when students learn to make these meaningful relationships like I'm showing you now, they automatically transfer them across their academic coursework. They are portable skills that benefit students in their immediate course, but more importantly, it benefits them throughout their course and in other courses. So let's look at Ethan. Ethan is a machinist, and Ethan encounters a question like this on an exam. Now, this could be a written exam or it could be an actual project that he's working on at his institution. Now, Ethan's success really hinges on his ability to make these connections. As you can see on the right, there's some content that Ethan is acutely aware of and he knows he needs to focus on. But likely he's not prepared to make the connection between this content and the concepts. And then likely he's not going to make the connection between the content, the concept, and the learning outcomes. But if he does learn these relationships, then he's going to build an infrastructure in his mind that helps him learn more effectively, and he'll be able to perform well on those comprehensive exams. Let's go to another course. This is my man Kobe, second year engineering student. If you work with students, you know they'll often, after a test, leave in this sort of fog of test taking where they'll say, you know, I thought I knew the material, but when I got to the test, I was confused. I couldn't progress in the way that I wanted to, something along those lines. And I pressed them a little further with my test recitation because what I'm trying to figure out is what exactly did you know? And if you press students properly, you'll find they do know some things, in differentiating between what they could bring to bear on an assessment and what they are unable to bring to bear on an assessment is critical information. And you'll find that much of your student attrition, student academic success metrics are all rooted in these interactions. So one of the things Kobe might say is, I recall something about price elasticity going into the exam. I knew about midpoint value. I knew about demand elasticity and inelasticity and unit elasticity. So he might say, you know, I know these things, but when I got to the actual exam question, I just couldn't bring them to bear in order to solve the problem. And many people will unfortunately think this is a retrieval problem, but it's actually not a retrieval problem. It's a relationship problem. So what Kobe is saying is that I knew this information. I had no idea about this information, the concepts in the course, and I certainly had not worked to activate that particular learning outcome in my thinking and in my learning. So Kobe was unprepared. So Kobe's success is largely going to depend on not if he just knows this content, but if he knows this content in the context of these concepts. And then he needs to know those concepts and how they relate to these learning outcomes. If Kobe doesn't know those things, then he's going to struggle on comprehensive exams. Let's do one more. So now we have a group of students who are working together for a literature course. They get to the exam, and the exam is based on this information. Now, it could be a written response like this, or it could be a writing assignment. Now, these students may have read the material and they may have studied and developed a high level of confidence. Just look at how confident those students are. They are ready. But then they get to the assessment, and what they really have to do is to be able to know this information that they've been explicitly studying, but they also have to be able to connect that information to these concepts. And those concepts may have never been mentioned in the stories explicitly, and the professor or instructor may have never mentioned them. However, these are key. So if you are a writing assistant, or if you work with students in writing as a writing consultant, then we have to be able to help students make the connection between the content on the right and the concepts in the middle. And then finally, they have to be able to understand how the content and the concepts work across to produce the learning outcome. So whenever I work with students on this, we find that students end up studying less, but because they're making the proper relationships, they learn the material at a much deeper level. That learning translates into the type of thinking and mental labor that they need to do on assessments. And also, faculty end up having to do less reteaching, less going over the same material, because students are able to generate the type of deep, meaningful relationships that faculty are ultimately looking for, but may not be explicitly asking for, or may not have the tools to help students develop. And so this deep learning entails establishing relationships among the daily content that students are given, the embedded course concepts, and the broader course learning outcomes. And if you do that, you'll find that students learn much more effectively, and they actually enjoy learning so much more. And so this is in my book. In the chapter on division of labor, there are certain skills, there are certain infrastructure that faculty need to put in place. But if those things are in place, then they find that students are much more effective. Wow. Now, I hope that information was as useful to you as it's been for the students that I've worked with. If you think about life, life is about relationships. Relationships with our family, with our friends, with our coworkers, our community, our networks, so on and so forth. And so all of the things we do are all weighed in the context of the relationships. Likewise, learning is about relationships. And if you see students spending a lot of time learning things, doing a lot of work, using a lot of different tactics, but they're not making these relationships, then you can bet they're going to struggle on those midterm exams and those comprehensive final exams. So you got this tool, use it. I'd love to hear your comments. check out the YouTube page. And when you use this, I'd love to hear back from you about how this has helped make learning more visible, more manageable, and more effective. Thanks.
This was the intro to biology course that I was teaching, that even though I haven't given more A's, the means I've gone out on all the tests. I've not had to apply curves to all the tests. And when I have, they're smaller. I've not had to apply as much of a curve.
Yeah.